The grand hotel lobby was silent, even though it was filled with people. Chandeliers sparkled above, waiters moved quickly to clear tables, and guests whispered to one another. But all eyes were fixed on a single man. He was tall, dressed in the finest suit money could buy. His face was sharp, his beard neatly trimmed, and his watch alone looked more expensive than the entire hotel. He was the Arab billionaire, powerful, feared, and respected. But now he was furious. His eyes burned with anger as he walked across the marble floor. Each step echoed like thunder. The staff bowed their heads, afraid to even look at him. The deal he had come for had collapsed, and he had no reason to stay. His private jet was waiting, and he was about to leave the country. The manager of the hotel tried to follow him, stammering nervously. "Sir, please. If you give us more time, enough." The billionaire's deep voice roared through the lobby. His accent was thick, his tone like steel. The manager froze. Not a single person dared to move. Near the corner, with a mop in his hand, stood a black janitor. He was young, but looked tired, as if life had been heavy on his shoulders. His uniform was worn, and his shoes had seen better days. He usually blended into the background, people rarely noticed him. But at this moment, he noticed everything. He saw the billionaire's anger. He saw the fear in the manager's eyes. He saw the guests holding their breath, too scared to even whisper. And he knew one thing: if the billionaire walked out now, it would be the end. The hotel would lose its biggest client, and everyone's jobs would be in danger. The janitor's heart raced. He wanted to help, but who was he? Just a cleaner. Nobody listened to him. Nobody ever cared about his words. He lowered his eyes, gripping his mop tighter, telling himself to stay quiet. But then, something inside him stirred. He remembered his past. He remembered the years when he had studied languages, the long nights spent reading books by a broken lamp, the way he once dreamed of becoming a translator, maybe even a teacher. Life had pushed him down. Poverty had taken away his chances. But the knowledge remained, and in this moment of silence, something escaped his lips. It was just one word. A single word, spoken softly, but not in English. Not in the common tongue of the hotel. He spoke in fluent, perfect Arabic. The sound cut through the silence like lightning. The billionaire froze mid-step, his hands still gripping his cane, his body stiff. Slowly, very slowly, he turned around. His sharp eyes scanned the room until they landed on the janitor in the corner. The janitor's chest tightened. He had not planned to speak. He did not even realize the word had slipped out. But it was too late now. The billionaire was staring directly at him, his face unreadable. The guests and staff turned their heads in confusion. Had the janitor just spoken Arabic? And not just a broken phrase, but with the elegance and flow of a native speaker. The billionaire's voice came low and heavy, each word like a challenge. "Say it again?" he ordered. The janitor swallowed hard. His legs trembled, but his voice came steady. He repeated the word, then added another phrase, a respectful greeting, in the billionaire's mother tongue. The entire lobby gasped. The sound was flawless. No foreign accent, no hesitation. It was as if a mirror of the billionaire's own people stood before him. For the first time that evening, the billionaire's anger cracked. His brows pulled together, not in rage, but in shock. He stepped closer, his expensive shoes clicking against the marble. The janitor stood still, his mop in hand, his uniform damp from sweat. "Who are you?" the billionaire demanded, his eyes narrowing. The janitor lifted his head. His voice was quiet, but filled with strength. "Just a man who listens and remembers." The hotel manager blinked in disbelief. Guests exchanged whispers, unable to believe what they were witnessing. A billionaire who never stopped for anyone now. Standing frozen, his departure halted because of a janitor. The silence grew heavy again. Everyone waited. Would the billionaire explode in fury? Or would he demand an explanation? Instead, the billionaire tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. But in his eyes, something had changed. Curiosity, recognition, maybe even respect. The janitor's heart thumped wildly. He had no idea what would happen next. But one thing was certain. The moment he spoke, fate shifted. The billionaire, once ready to storm out forever, was no longer leaving. He had stopped, and the whole room knew it was because of the janitor's voice. The lobby of the hotel still held its breath. Staff, guests, even the manager stood frozen. The janitor had spoken, and the impossible had happened. The Arab billionaire had stopped. The billionaire's sharp gaze stayed locked on the janitor. His footsteps echoed as he moved closer. The weight of his presence was crushing. People instinctively stepped back, giving way, as if the floor itself belonged to him. The janitor felt his palms sweat. His uniform clung to his back. He had not meant to reveal anything. Yet now, the richest, most powerful man in the room stood, just a few feet away, staring at him like a puzzle that demanded an answer. "You," the billionaire said slowly, his voice calm but dangerous. "Where did you learn my language?" The janitor lowered his eyes for a moment, then raised them again. His voice trembled slightly, but he spoke with courage. "Years ago, I studied." Coy listened. "I lived among books when I had nothing else. Arabic stayed with me." The billionaire's brow furrowed. His anger had cooled, replaced by curiosity. Around them, whispers spread. How could a janitor speak like this? What kind of man was he? The manager, desperate to save face, tried to interrupt. "Sir, please forgive him. He is only a janitor." Silence. The billionaire cut him off with a single word. His eyes never left the janitor. For the first time in his life, the janitor felt seen. Not as invisible staff, not as a nobody with a mop, but as someone worth listening to. "Speak again," the billionaire commanded. The janitor took a deep breath. Then he began to speak, not in English, but in flowing Arabic. His words were respectful, ancient greetings he had memorized years ago. He spoke about peace, about honor, about dignity. His voice was steady now, growing stronger. With each phrase, the billionaire's lips parted slightly, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the entire room could feel the connection forming between two men from worlds apart. When the janitor stopped, silence filled the lobby again. The billionaire finally spoke, but softer this time. "You speak like my own blood. No mistake, no hesitation. How is it possible for you, a man in this uniform, to carry my language so perfectly?" The janitor's chest tightened. Memories rushed back his youth, his dreams, the promises he once made to himself. He lowered his voice. "I once wanted to be more, to teach, to travel, to live with knowledge, but life, it took another path." His words were simple, but heavy. The billionaire stood still, his eyes narrowing with thought. Slowly, he turned and looked at the crowd, watching. Then, to their surprise, he gestured toward a chair. "Sit," the billionaire ordered. The janitor blinked. He had never sat in the lobby, never been invited to sit anywhere near guests. The staff gasped, some covering their mouths. The manager looked ready to faint. I can't," the janitor stammered. You are not just anything." The billionaire interrupted, his tone sharp. "Sit." The janitor hesitated, then obeyed. He placed the mop carefully against the wall and sat on the edge of the chair, nervous but composed. The billionaire sat across from him, folding his hands. The entire lobby buzzed with shock. A billionaire and a janitor, sitting face to face like equals. The billionaire leaned forward. "Tell me your story. Every word. From the beginning." The janitor's throat tightened. No one had ever asked. No one had ever cared. For years, he had been invisible. But now, under the piercing gaze of the billionaire, his story mattered, so he began. He spoke of his childhood, growing up poor but determined. He spoke of his fascination with languages, how he borrowed books, how he repeated words until they stuck. He told of the nights he dreamed of becoming a translator, maybe even a professor. But then, life struck hard. His parents grew ill. Bills piled up. He was forced to abandon his studies and work wherever he could. Dreams faded, replaced with survival. The billionaire listened in silence, his expression unreadable, but his eyes sharp. Not once did he look away. The janitor finished softly. "I lost everything, but the words remained. They cannot be taken. Not by poverty, not by pain." The silver tray trembled slightly in the waiter's hands as he placed 2 cups of tea on the table. No one dared to speak. The air inside the grand lobby was heavy, filled with disbelief. Guests peeked from behind their chairs. Staff froze mid-step. And the hotel manager wiped sweat from his forehead. The Arab billionaire, known for his pride, known for his temper, was seated face to face with the janitor. Not just seated, but waiting for tea with him, as if they were equals. The janitor's hands shook as he lifted the steaming cup. He'd never imagined himself here, under so many eyes, across from one of the richest men in the world. His heart thumped, but his voice stayed steady. "You asked for my story," he said softly. "I will tell it." The billionaire leaned back in his chair, his sharp eyes never leaving the man. He said nothing, only lifted his own cup slowly, like a judge waiting for a verdict. The janitor took a breath. His words carried not only his past, but his pain. "I was born far from here. My family had little, but my mother, T, always told me education is the only wealth a poor man can carry. She would sit with me late at night, even when the candles burned low, and help me read. My father worked until his hands bled, just to buy me old books. I studied every word, and languages. Languages became my escape." The billionaire's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not interrupt. The janitor continued, his voice low but filled with emotion. "I dreamed of being more than what I was born into. I dreamed of teaching, of traveling, of being a man people listened to. Arabic was my favorite. It felt alive. It felt like music. I wanted to be a translator, maybe even a professor one day. I thought, if I could master words, I could master my life." He paused, staring down at the cup in his hands. Steam curled upward, blurring his reflection. But dreams don't always survive hunger. His voice cracked, but he went on. "My mother fell ill. My father's strength failed. Medicine was expensive. Rent was unforgiving. I tried to work and study, but soon, the books grew dusty, and the bills grew larger. I watched my parents fade, while my own future slipped through my fingers." The billionaire's jaw tightened. For the first time, his face revealed something human sympathy hidden behind pride. The janitor swallowed, forcing himself to finish. "I lost them both, too soon. And when they were gone, I had nothing left but debt and grief. I left school. I left my dreams, and I took the first job that would let me survive. Cleaning floors, emptying bins, mopping the footprints of people who never even looked at me." The silence in the lobby deepened. Even the clink of cups had stopped. Guests leaned forward, listening. Staff lowered their eyes, ashamed. The janitor raised his head now, his eyes wet but steady. "But I never forgot the words. At night, when the world was quiet, I whispered them to myself. I read scraps of books thrown away. I carried Arabic in my heart, even when I had nothing. Because it was the only treasure that could not be stolen. The billionaire stared at him for a long time. His hands rested against his cane, his gaze sharp. But behind his eyes was something heavy recognition. Slowly, the billionaire leaned forward. His voice was deep, but softer now. Do you know why? I stopped when you spoke. The janitor shook his head. The billionaire's face grew darker, but not with anger. Because your words, they reminded me of my brother. He too was once poor. He too fought with nothing but knowledge. He taught me my own language when I was too proud to listen, and he died before I could repay him. The janitor's lips parted, surprised. He had not expected such a confession. For the first time, the billionaire's voice broke. Just slightly. When you spoke, it was like hearing him again. A ghost in your voice. And I could not walk away. The room was silent. Even the air seemed still. The janitor's hands tightened around the cup. He lowered his eyes, then whispered, I am sorry for your loss. The billionaire leaned back, his face hardening again, though the sorrow still lingered in his eyes. He tapped his cane once against the floor, the sound echoing. You lost your dreams, the billionaire said slowly. But you kept your dignity. That I respect. More than wealth, more than gold. The janitor felt his chest tightened. For years, he had been invisible. For years, his story had been locked inside him. And now, the most powerful man in the room had heard it. The billionaire stood suddenly. His voice thundered across the lobby. Enough. This man is no ordinary janitor. He carries wisdom in his words. He carries pride in his silence. And today, he carries my respect. Gasps filled the room. Staff looked at each other in disbelief. The manager nearly dropped his clipboard. The janitor sat still, overwhelmed. His story had been told, and somehow it had touched the heart of the untouchable. For the first time in years, he felt something stir inside him again. Not fear, not shame, but hope. The billionaire's words still echoed in the grand hotel lobby. He carries wisdom in his words. He carries pride in his silence. And today, he carries my respect. The staff exchanged glances, their eyes wide. Some guests whispered in disbelief. The hotel manager stood stiff, his mouth half open, unsure if he should smile or cry. No one had ever seen the billionaire like this before. The janitor sat frozen, his mop still resting against the wall, unsure if he had imagined everything. He was just a cleaner. Yet the richest man in the room had spoken of him as though he were a man of honor. The billionaire's sharp eyes turned back to him. Stand, he ordered. The janitor rose slowly, his knees weak. Walk with me, the billionaire said. His tone calm but firm. Every step the two men took together made the crowd murmur. The janitor's faded uniform stood in stark contrast to the billionaire's flawless suit, yet in that moment it was not wealth that drew eyes, it was respect. They stopped near the tall windows of the lobby, where sunlight spilled across the floor. The billionaire placed one hand on his cane and looked at the janitor with a piercing gaze. Do you know what makes a man worthy? He asked. The janitor shook his head cautiously. It is not money, the billionaire continued. Money can be lost. It is not power. Power can be stolen. A man is worthy when he keeps his dignity, even when the world tries to break him. And you have done that. The janitor swallowed hard. His throat ached. He wanted to speak, but found no words. The billionaire then turned his head slightly toward the guests, his voice rising again. But words are not enough. A man must be tested. The lobby grew quiet again. What kind of test would this be? The billionaire looked back at the janitor. Tell me, if I gave you a bag of gold now, enough to change your life forever, would you walk away from this place without another word? The janitor's heart pounded. He imagined it freedom from debt, a better home, food without worry, maybe even a chance to study again. His life could change in an instant. But then he thought of his parents, of the lessons they had taught him. He thought of the years he had survived with nothing but dignity to guide him. Slowly, he lifted his chin. "No," he said firmly. The billionaire raised an eyebrow. "No?" The janitor's voice grew steady. "Because dignity cannot be bought. If I walk away with gold, I lose myself, and I have already lost too much." The billionaire's lips curled, not in anger, but in something rare, small smile. He slammed his cane down once, the sound sharp and powerful. "Good," he declared. "Then you are a man I can trust." The crowd gasped again. The hotel manager's eyes nearly popped out. A billionaire had just called a janitor trustworthy. But the billionaire was not finished. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only the janitor could hear. "Loyalty, dignity, respect, these are rarer than diamonds. I need men like you, not as a servant, but as a companion." The janitor blinked, his mind spinning. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. The billionaire then raised his voice once more for all to hear. "From this day, he is not to be treated as a cleaner. He will walk with me, he will work with me, and his words will carry weight in my presence." The silence in the room shattered into murmurs. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others nodded with admiration. The staff stood stunned, not daring to protest. The janitor stood frozen, his chest heavy. He had spent years invisible, unnoticed, treated as if he did not exist. And now, in a single moment, he was lifted into the light. He whispered, "Why me?" The billionaire looked at him, his expression serious. "Because the world laughed at you, but you did not lose yourself. That makes you stronger than men with crowns on their heads." The janitor felt tears sting his eyes. He lowered his head, unable to hold back the emotion. For years, he had been nothing in the eyes of the world. And now, this man, the one who could crush nations with his wealth, had given him respect. The billionaire tapped his cane again. "Tomorrow, you will no longer wear this." The morning sun rose over the city, painting the glass towers gold. At the entrance of the billionaire's mansion, a sleek black car waited. The janitor, now dressed in a simple but clean suit, stood nervously by the gate. His hands shook. As he clutched the jacket, he had never worn such clothes before. The driver, dressed in white gloves, opened the door with a nod. "He is waiting." The janitor stepped inside. The leather seats smelled of wealth and power. He had never been inside a car like this, let alone one that belonged to a billionaire. His heart pounded with every turn of the wheels at the mansion. Guards stood tall, bowing as the car passed through iron gates. The building was massive, built with marble walls and tall pillars, shining in the morning light. The janitor felt small as he stepped out, his shoes clicking against the stone pathway. Inside, the billionaire sat at a long dining table, a silver cane by his side. His face was calm but unreadable. "You came," the billionaire said, his deep voice filling the hall. "Yes, sir," the janitor replied, bowing slightly. "Good, now comes the real test." The janitor froze. Test. He had already been tested in the hotel when he refused gold. What more could this man want from him? The billionaire tapped his cane once against the floor. "Sit." The janitor obeyed. The table was set with golden plates and food he had never seen before, but he was too nervous to eat. The billionaire's eyes narrowed. "You said dignity cannot be bought. Today, I will see if your loyalty can be shaken." The janitor's heart raced. A servant entered the room, carrying a briefcase. He set it down on the table and opened it. Inside was a mountain of cash, crisp and untouched, stacked neatly in rows. The sight alone made the janitor's breath catch. It was more money than he had ever seen in his entire life. "This," the billionaire said, "is yours if you walk away now. No more mops, no more uniforms. You can buy a house, start a business, even leave this city. All you must do is never speak to me again." The janitor's chest tightened. His hands trembled. A life of struggle could end with a single choice. He looked at the billionaire, then back at the money. His mind screamed with temptation. Years of pain, years of hunger, years of humiliation, they could all vanish in an instant. But then he remembered the words of his parents. He remembered his promise to himself, the night he had whispered into the dark. "Even if the world breaks me, I will not break myself." The janitor raised his head. His voice shook at first, but it grew steady. "No." The billionaire leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "No." The janitor nodded firmly. "Money cannot buy loyalty, and money cannot replace respect. I would rather walk beside you with empty pockets than walk away with a fortune that kills my soul." For a long moment, silence filled the hall. The billionaire's face was stone, unreadable. The air felt heavy then. Suddenly, the billionaire's lips curved into the faintest smile. He slammed his cane down on the marble floor. The sound echoed like thunder. "Good," he declared. "Very good." The servant snapped the briefcase shut and carried it away. The billionaire stood slowly, his sharp eyes fixed on the janitor. "Do you know how many men I have met who would sell their soul for a handful of gold? Too many. But you are different. You remind me of men I once trusted, men who could not be bought." The janitor felt his knees weaken. Relief washed over him, but he stayed strong, standing tall. The billionaire continued. "But money is not the only test. There is another." The janitor frowned. "Another." The billionaire nodded. He lifted his cane and pointed toward the door. "Outside, 3 men wait. Each one will speak lies about you. They will try to shame you. They will try to break you with their words. If you lose your temper, if you fall to anger, then you are no different from the rest." The janitor's stomach tightened. He had faced insults all his life from guests, from strangers, even from people who never learned his name. He thought he had grown used to it. But hearing the billionaire say this test would decide his future made his chest heavy. Still, he nodded. "I will face them." The billionaire's eyes gleamed. "Then let us see." The doors opened, and 3 men stepped inside. They looked him up and down with sneers. One laughed harshly. "This is the man. He still smells like cleaning soap." The second spat on the floor near his shoes. "A janitor in a suit is still a janitor." The third leaned close, whispering, "You think you belong here. Men like you only belong on their knees, scrubbing floors." The janitor's fists tightened, his knuckles white. Rage burned in his chest. Every word cut like a knife. He wanted to shout, to strike, to prove them wrong. But then he remembered the billionaire's voice. A man is worthy when he keeps his dignity. Even when the world tries to break him. He unclenched his fists. He lifted his chin. And with a calm voice, he said, "I do not need your approval. I only need my truth." The men fell silent, surprised. The billionaire slammed his cane once more, his voice booming. "Enough." The 3 men bowed their heads and left the hall quickly. The billionaire turned to the janitor. His eyes shone with something rare pride. "You passed, twice you were tested, twice you stood tall. From this day you are not my servant. You are my right hand." The janitor's heart pounded. His life had changed forever. The news spread like wildfire. Within days, every staff member in the hotel, every guest who had witnessed the scene. And even the local newspapers carried whispers of the strange story. A billionaire had chosen a janitor as his right hand. People laughed at first. Some called it madness. Others called it weakness. But slowly, those who had seen the truth, the way the billionaire had looked at the janitor, the way he had tested him, knew it was something more. Inside the billionaire's mansion, life had already begun to change. The janitor no longer wore his faded uniform. Each morning, he stepped into a tailored suit provided by the billionaire's own tailor. The fit was perfect, though he still felt awkward inside it. His hands, used to scrubbing floors, now carried files, books, and sometimes even the billionaire's. At first, the staff inside the mansion sneered. A janitor playing gentleman, they whispered behind his back. But the billionaire's orders were clear. Treat him with respect, or answer to me. Slowly, the whispers died. One evening, the billionaire and the janitor sat together in the grand study, the room lined with books taller than a man. A fire crackled in the hearth, and shadows danced along the walls. "You are adjusting," the billionaire said, his voice calm. The janitor nodded. "It feels strange. All my life, I was invisible. Now, people look at me, some with respect, some with hate. I don't know which is harder to carry." The billionaire's eyes gleamed. Respect always carries weight. Hate is only noise. The janitor absorbed the words, knowing they were true. Days turned into weeks. The billionaire took him everywhere: business meetings, charity events, private dinners. People stared when the janitor walked into rooms filled with men in expensive suits. Some scoffed, some tried to humiliate him. But the billionaire always silenced them with a single look. At one meeting, a wealthy partner laughed openly. "You trust a cleaner to stand beside you. He has no education, no training. What use is he to a man like you?" The billionaire's voice thundered across the table. "He has what money cannot buy. Honor. Can you say the same?" The partner's laughter died instantly. The janitor sat quietly, but inside, his heart swelled. For the first time in his life, someone had defended him not with pity, but with pride. At night, when the halls of the mansion grew quiet, the two men sometimes shared tea like old friends. The billionaire rarely spoke of his past, but when he did, his voice carried pain. "I was not always rich," he confessed one night. "My family was poor. I clawed my way up. People betrayed me. Friends turned against me. That is why I trust no one. Money builds walls, but it does not heal wounds." The janitor listened in silence. He understood loneliness too well. Finally, he said softly, "Even the richest man is poor if he has no one to trust." The billionaire's eyes flickered, and for a brief second, his hard face softened. But outside the mansion, rumors spread. Journalists wanted answers. "Why this man?" they asked. "What makes him special?" Some accused the janitor of manipulation. Others claimed he was hiding secrets. Yet no matter what was said, the billionaire never explained. He only replied, "He has proven himself where others have failed." One afternoon, the janitor walked through the market streets with the billionaire's driver. Ordinary people recognized him now. Some shook his hand with smiles. Others mocked him, saying, "A janitor in a suit," and in return, the billionaire gave him something far greater than wealth: respect before the world. At a gala dinner, filled with the richest men and women in the city, the billionaire rose to make a speech. Lights glittered, music stilled, and all eyes turned toward him. He spoke of success, of struggle, of betrayal. And then, his voice rang loud. "Tonight, I stand not alone. Tonight, beside me, stands a man who was once ignored, once invisible, a janitor. But today, he is my brother in honor. Remember, this wealth does not create greatness. Character does. The crowd erupted in whispers, shock, even applause. The janitor stood frozen, his heart pounding as the billionaire placed a hand on his shoulder for all to see. That night, the janitor realized something powerful. He was no longer a shadow in the corner of a lobby. He was no longer just a man with a mop. He was part of something greater, a bond built not on money, but on trust. The night was grand. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above the ballroom. Soft music played in the background, and the richest men and women in the city gathered around tables covered in silver and gold. It was a celebration, one of the billionaire's largest business gatherings of the year. Reporters lined the walls, cameras flashing, waiting for their story. Every time the billionaire hosted such an event, news was made. But tonight, something different lingered in the Iran anticipation. A rumor. Whispers spread from table to table. Would he finally announce the new face beside him? The janitor, not a janitor anymore, stood at the edge of the hall. He wore a black suit tailored perfectly to his frame. Yet his hands still trembled. Slightly, his eyes darted between the guests. He could feel their stares, their judgments. Some sneered, some whispered, others looked curious. And then the billionaire entered. The room fell silent at once. His presence was heavy, commanding. He walked slowly, leaning on his cane, but his gaze was sharp, proud. And at his side, to everyone's shock, walked the former janitor. Gasps rippled through the hall. Impossible. Someone muttered. He brought him here. The billionaire took his place at the center of the stage. A single microphone stood before him. He raised a hand, and the hall fell into silence. "My friends," he began, his deep voice echoing through. "The room tonight is not about business. Tonight is about truth." Reporters leaned forward, pens scratching. Guests held their breath. The billionaire gestured toward the man beside him. "You see this man? Some of you know him. You saw him once cleaning floors. You saw him invisible, unnoticed. A janitor." Laughter broke out from a corner of the room, quickly silenced by the billionaire's glare. "Yes," the billionaire continued, his voice growing sharper. "He was a janitor. But when I was blinded by pride, when I was about to walk away from this city forever, it was his words that stopped me. He spoke in my own tongue. He reminded me of honor, of dignity, of the things wealth can never buy." The hall was quiet now. The sneers vanished. Everyone leaned in closer. The billionaire's cane struck the floor once, the sound echoing like thunder. "I tested him with gold. He refused. I tested him with insults. He endured. I tested him with silence. He spoke with dignity. And so, I declare before all of you, this man is no longer my servant. He is no longer a janitor." The janitor's chest tightened. His knees nearly gave way. The billionaire turned, his voice fierce. "From this night forward, he is my partner." The hall exploded in gasps, shouts, whispers. The reporters nearly dropped their pens. "Partner," someone cried out. "Impossible." But the billionaire raised a hand again, silencing the storm. "Yes, my partner. Not because of his wealth, for he has none. Not because of his power, for he never sought it. But because he has what none of you could give me: loyalty without price, and respect without fear." The janitor's eyes burned with tears. His voice trembled as he whispered, "I am not worthy." The billionaire leaned closer, his hand firm on his shoulder. "You are more worthy than men with crowns on their heads. Tonight, I lift you not because of me, but because of you. You carried honor when no one watched, and now the world will. Watch you rise." The cameras flashed. Guests sat stunned. Some clapped hesitantly, then stronger. until the hall echoed with applause. Others shook their heads, too proud to accept it. But it didn't matter. The truth had been spoken. After the speech, people swarmed. Some came to congratulate the janitor, shaking his hand, their eyes filled with new respect. Others whispered bitterly, unable to understand how a man who once mopped floors now stood equal with a billionaire. Later, when the crowd thinned, the janitor stood quietly at the balcony, looking over the city lights. The night air was cool, carrying the faint sounds of celebration from inside. The billionaire joined him, cane tapping softly against the floor. For a moment, they stood in silence. "You changed my life," the billionaire said at last. "You reminded me of something I had forgotten. That greatness does not come from riches, but from the soul." The janitor swallowed hard, his voice breaking. "And you? You gave me back my dignity. You gave me hope I thought I lost forever." Billionaire's eyes softened. "From now on, we walk together. Not master and servant. Not rich and poor, but as brothers." The janitor turned his head slowly, meeting his gaze. And for the first time, he smiled without fear. Behind them, the ballroom roared with music and applause. But on that balcony, in that quiet moment, too, men stood side by side, one who had everything, one who had nothing. And, together, they had both found what they were missing. The billionaire tightened his grip on the janitor's shoulder and spoke the words that would be remembered long after the night ended.